Hidden markets are markets that do not rely on prices or do not rely exclusively on them. Taylor Swift could have priced the tickets super high. She'd rather charge $99 for the tickets. But as a result, you get lots of people scrambling for the tickets. We don't do college admissions by saying whoever's going to pay the most gets to go to these elite colleges. A lot of the ways that the hidden markets operate are going to be familiar to folks because they play in them every day, even though they might not conceive of them as hidden market.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Lavin Voices podcast. I'm your host, Charles Yao. My guest today is Judd Kessler. Judd is the author of a fascinating new book. It's called Lucky by Design. In a nutshell, it's about this phenomenon known as hidden markets, which are all around us. Think about these scenarios. How do you score a reservation at the hot new restaurant? How do you land a limited daycare spot? How do you get tickets to that Taylor Swift concert? How do hospitals prioritize organ donations? We all know what traditional markets are. What you get depends on what you're willing to pay for it. With hidden markets, such as the examples above, it's not all about money. There are other variables at play, and Judd's book is about those other variables. We're also going to get into how you yourself, especially at work, are likely in charge of your own hidden markets. How do you design them to tip the scales in your favor? Judd is one of the most respected young professors in America. He teaches at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. Here's our conversation.
Just to start very quickly, literally, what are hidden markets?
Excellent. So hidden markets are different from what we're used to, what I would call visible markets where you go into a store, you see a price, you decide whether you want to purchase the good at that price. And lots of markets that we play in are simple like that. Hidden markets are markets that do not rely on prices or do not rely exclusively on them. And there's tons of examples. There's examples in cases where we don't think prices are inappropriate. So we don't let people pay for donor organs if they need a kidney transplant. We don't have them pay for life-saving medical treatment in hospitals. Like during COVID, we didn't let people pay to get the last ventilator. There were some other set of rules that determine that. And then, there's places where you don't make people pay for preferential treatment at the library. If you wanted to do that, they could go to the bookstore and buy a book. But at the library or for our seats in public schools, we don't have prices. And then there's cases where there are prices, but they're not doing all the work. So for restaurant reservations, for seats at live events, there's lots of markets where you pay a price, but there's many more people who want the good at that price than there are slots available. And so we need some other set of rules to determine who gets what.
Right. So what I'm hearing is it's not solely dependent on price, the exchange of money, as most visible markets are. Price sometimes does come into consideration, but it's not the paramount concern. There are other things. So what are those other things?
Yeah. So it depends on how the market is set up, but a lot of the ways that the hidden markets operate are going to be familiar to folks because they play in them every day, even though they might not conceive of them as hidden markets. So a lot of markets are first come, first serve. First come, first serve races are very common, particularly for restaurant reservations and live events. So whoever clicks first gets it. And when there's lots of demand, people are all rushing to click for the restaurant reservation at the very same second when they get released. This is becoming popular also with product drops, buying online. So I don't know if Labubus have entered the zeitgeist enough, but if Beanie Babies were being sold today, right, they'd be released at a moment in time, and everyone would click to try to buy them. And that's a first come, first serve race. Then there's first come, first serve waiting lists and lines where you have to show up early, and whoever gets there first gets priority, and those who arrive later or are not willing to wait as long, have later claims on the scarce resource. There's allocations by lottery where there's some randomness built in. There's market rules where you have to rank your preferences. You say what you like best, second best, and so on. And there's markets that we play in, like dating markets and labor markets, where there's someone on the other side of the market. So you have to signal things about yourself, about what you want, so that they find you appealing and worth investing more time and energy and learning about. So they span the gamut of ways that we allocate things in these hidden markets.
Right. And all of what you said, you're right, is familiar to me in my day-to-day life. the first come, first serve thing. In Toronto, there are restaurants that do like the first of every month. And then guess what? At 8:01 a.m., it's
They're
gone.
all gone.
Right.
Yep.
I remember in the CD era, people lining up outside the HMV, like CD Superstore for Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, like all night, just like lawn chairs, Guns N' Roses fans.
And and what's been interesting over time is that markets shift. So a lot of first come, first served lines and waiting lists have kind of morphed into races. So it used to be that for live event tickets, you would wait online, just like you did for the Guns N' Roses CDs. You'd camp out in front of the box office to get first dibs at tickets. We've done away with those lines, and now it's all kind of first come, first serve race when the tickets are released on the Ticketmaster website. And so that has changed the way these markets operate. There's a lot more scope for kind of speculators to come in and buy tickets in first come, first serve races because they can program bots to be way faster than anyone else. Whereas if you were going to buy tickets to resell in the old days, you had to send somebody to wait in line. And usually there were limits. They could only buy 4 tickets, for example, when they got to the box office. So the change in technology has made which market rules apply in different industries, different over time. And so you need new strategies in these markets.
Right. And the product drop thing is real because my friend works at a bank, programs a bot to pre-fill his Visa information anytime Supreme launches like a hat or something. And this is a very smart gentleman. He spends hours programming bots. So one premise of your book is that we want to understand hidden markets. Once seen, we actually know how to win them. So with this first come, first serve stuff, like how does somebody win?
Yeah, so it's not, you have to see the market and then you have to figure out your strategy in the market. And so those are kind of two, you have to see that it's a market first to then figure out what the strategy is. So one very obvious one is you have to know, for example, for a race, you have to know that a race is happening. If you went to try to get that popular restaurant reservation in Toronto without showing up at 8:00 in the morning, like you're out of luck, and that's it. That's the ballgame. You have to know that a race is on. You have to be there at the start of the race. And then you have to figure out what your strategy is going to be in the race. So for restaurant reservations, I have a framework that I call go for gold and settle for silver. So these are two different strategies you can play. And this is more general than restaurant reservations. But for example, you could decide that when the race comes, you want to go for your absolute favorite reservation, the Saturday night, 7:00, 7:30 reservation that, is your ideal. Or you might decide you want to settle for silver. Instead of going for the gold reservation at 7, you might want to pretend that your first choice is something like a 5:00 or 5:30 reservation. Not as desirable, but you're substantially more likely to get that if you're competing against lots of other people. If you go get that 5:30 reservation, you very well may get it while everybody else is rushing to go for 7:00. And then you'll get a seat, maybe less desirable, but you'll get to eat at that restaurant while others do not.
Have you done this personally, Judd?
I tried to go for gold at the French Laundry for my wife's 40th birthday and failed. But when I clicked that 7:00 reservation and the page reloaded, I saw that 4:30 were still available. And then when I went to click at 4:30, by the time, after it had reloaded once, the 4:30 was then gone. If I had gone for 4:30 initially, I would have gotten it the first time, and my wife could check that off her bucket list, but she still hasn't been able to go there. But these are the kinds of strategies that, yes, I do play in my own life.
Well, she'll get that selfie with Thomas Keller one day. So let's take another of your preferred examples, which is Daycare. It is also first come, first serve. It's quite dire and urgent. If you're a new parent, you know that. But unlike restaurants, there is no tiered hierarchy. There is no Wednesday at 9:30 spot. It just is or isn't. So how do you win at Daycare?
So with Daycare, it's, again, knowing that you're in a race. And the sad fact in some of these markets where there's many more people who want the Daycare slots than there are slots available, you have to recognize the race is happening even well before you're interested in being in the market. So, it is not uncommon in high demand places like New York City, where I live, for people when they are pregnant to find the daycare that is appealing to them, get themselves on the wait list for their, not yet born child, because it is going to be a first come, first serve waiting list. And, if you need care in 9 months, you want to get on the waiting list now so that there'll be a spot available for you. Now, of course, if you show up with a 6-month-old and say, I'm ready to put him in daycare and try to get on the waiting list, then you're going to be out of luck. So again, it's knowing, that this is a market where you have to be thinking ahead. That's going to be the key there.
Right. So far, the two things have been recognize that this is a market, not inconsequential thing to start. And then it seems with the restaurant example to maybe be willing to compromise and still get in the game. So what are a few other things to round out how to win?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the market rule. So one thing that's happened over time is that we're doing a lot more of the allocations by lottery. So a lot more randomization built in. And so, one trick in markets with randomization is trying to figure out how to enter more times. So sometimes, I know it's sounds like you're cheating, but it's not necessarily the case. So there's lots of markets where, you're going to enter a lottery for your family or for, a pair of tickets for a theater production, like a Hamilton, lottery before the show. Or, to go hiking in Yosemite, you're going to be lotteried in to get permits to hike Half Dome. And in all those cases, you can enter yourself and you can, have a friend that enters as well. You can have, your spouse or your adult children enter some of these visa lotteries. You can have up to 8 people, enter for 8 permits at Yosemite. And these are cases where you work a little bit harder to get more people to participate in the lottery on your behalf, and you multiply your chances of winning kind of as scales with the number of entries that you make. Some lotteries, as we're talking about them, have rules where the more times you've lost, the higher probability you have of winning next time, kind of rewarding repeated attempts. And so then you could play what I call an early and often strategy, where you enter even in years you don't want to win. You just enter to kind of build up the chance that you'll be able to win in a future year. A lot of hunting tags for big game. If you want to go shoot a moose or something, the states have rules like that, and you see people kind of entering as soon as they're old enough to realize they want to be a recreational hunter.
Yeah, so there's a lot of collateral thinking, because as you were saying that thing about the lottery and entering and losing, I was thinking of the NBA draft, where the higher picks go to the teams with the worst records, and toward the end of the season, teams might crater and intentionally lose just to get a shot at a few more ping pong balls.
I don't condone that as a sports fan. I like games to be, competitive and fun to watch even late in the season. But it's true that in lots of markets, priority, you have to understand the rules that generate priority so that you can take advantage of those rules. So we talked about daycare, but, in New York City, if you are trying to get into kindergarten, which is, highly competitive, lots of people want to go to the best kindergartens, it's helpful to know that you get higher priority if your kid was in pre-kindergarten in that school, and the pre-kindergarten programs might be less competitive to get into. And so this is one we did with my daughter when we were in a less desirable school zone than we are in now, where there was a school that we liked that we didn't really have great priority for, but had a lot of pre-K slots. So we put our daughter in a pre-K program there so that when it was time to apply to kindergarten, she would have a leg up on folks who did not have, did not participate in the pre-K program. And again, the equivalent of tanking the end of the season to get higher priority, it's it was a little further from home. It was a little bit annoying to get her there in the mornings. But we made that investment because we wanted to have better, priority when it came time to kindergarten applications.
Right. You got the Cooper flag equivalent of the kindergarten there. I did want to talk a bit about how hidden markets play out at work, both in being caught in them, so to speak, but also in controlling them yourself. But just to kind of end off on the overall stuff, can we just talk about an under-discussed performer, Taylor Swift, and the story of her Eras tour, which made like $1 billion, is actually a nice parable for how hidden markets and visible markets work. and the way she structured the prices. Because certainly she could have charged as much money as possible to as many people as possible, but she didn't do that.
Yeah. So this is, as we transition from thinking about playing in markets as a market participant to setting up markets and deciding if you're going to, allow there to be a hidden market as a firm pricing your products. Like Taylor Swift decided, as you said, she could have priced the tickets super high. She could have made it, thousands of dollars to get in, and she would have sold out the entire tour at very high prices. And you saw that because what ended up happening, a lot of tickets were resold, and you could kind of see what the secondary market, what people were willing to pay for those tickets. And it was many times what the face value of the tickets were. A lot of sellers will decide that they don't want to charge as much as they can. And there's lots of interesting reasons for that. So in Taylor Swift's case, it could be that she actually cares a ton about her fans and does not want them to have to pay high prices. It could also be that she doesn't want to come across as taking advantage of her fans, right? She's a billionaire. Having her fans have to pay hundreds of dollars for a ticket might not be a great look. She'd rather charge $99 for the tickets. But as a result, you get this big excess demand, and you get lots of people scrambling for the tickets. And so it ended up being that for her tour, they did. It was, it would have normally been first come, first serve on Ticketmaster, but the whole tour sold out in the pre-sale stage, which was through a program called Verified Fan. And that essentially worked like a lottery. So you signed up, proved you were a real person, and then got entered into a lottery to be able to buy tickets. But again, there were so many people on the day that pre-sale started that the Ticketmaster website basically broke, and people waited for hours and hours and did not have access, to tickets in the end. People put tickets in their cart and then, ended up their code that they had been given to buy them didn't work. And so it ended up being a nightmare, even though they, were trying to innovate and give out these tickets in a more equitable way. And so this just goes to show how careful you have to be when you're rolling out a hidden market to make sure that it works and achieves the goals that you want it to.
Right. And I mean, one reason I would imagine for Taylor Swift or any musician to not just charge as much as possible and have it be first come, first serve is that then all the people at your concert are just going to be super rich people, and you're out servicing the fans.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that's true in lots of markets where we decide not to use prices. Like we don't do college admissions by saying whoever's going to pay the most gets to go to these elite colleges, because then the class is filled with just the kids of the ultra wealthy. Maybe as a school, you want to create a class that's focus more on academic or extracurricular success, or kind of more diverse than just whoever's willing to pay the most. And so that, affects the experience for the people at the college. It might also, be a much more fun concert if it's full of like real diehard Taylor Swift fans, Swifties, rather than, people who are willing to pay thousands of dollars a ticket. Although I'm sure those two groups do overlap. So it might be that you really could fill the stadium with rich fans of Taylor Swift. But yeah, a lot of times you decide to introduce a hidden market because you don't want to just serve your ultra rich clientele. You want to serve more broadly.
Right. And is this for organizations that are releasing products, serving a customer base, this randomization, this walking away from first come, first serve, walking away from whoever pays the most, and this randomizing effect, is that becoming more and more popular?
It's becoming more popular, but it's not fast enough. I actually think it's kind of being underused. There's lots of markets where things are effectively random. I mean, if you take out the bots, which buy up a lot of tickets, or now are getting restaurant reservations, and to the chagrin of the restaurateurs who don't like the bots and buying or claiming the reservations and then reselling them. It's not in the restaurant's interest, because a lot of times they don't get resold and the tables go empty. Those first come first serve markets, if you could do them with lotteries for all the people who want to, that might be more fair than having, everybody have to show up at 8 a.m. and like frantically try to click. It's like a lot more stressful than just saying, I'll eat at any time on, next Saturday. If I'm lucky enough to get a slot, let me know. Right? That seems like it would actually be a much better customer experience than everyone having to kind of anxiously await the launch of the reservations.
Right. Yeah.
Another reason, though, that firms often will create these hidden markets priced below they need to is to generate buzz and excitement. And it's possible that maybe the first come first serve races or lines around the block help to do that. So, the Labubu kind of fad where everyone's going out and trying to buy these ugly, cute monsters to put on their bags. This is a case where people are becoming interested in this product in part because it's so hard to get, because there's so much drama around the drops, the releases of the product, or when they get put on the store shelves. And so it could be that that's also serving a purpose for the sellers to drive that demand.
Right. I remember many years ago, a band would come and you just buy concert tickets. But then now there's this intermediary, this technological scrim that's presented itself as a barrier. And it's almost like you have to be a software engineer. So wouldn't it be incumbent on the companies who just want to sell the tickets and the artists who want the best fans to figure this part out and figure out this hidden market?
I think they should be doing more. I mean, there's a personal opinion and, someone who's looked at this market. I think there's barriers to that in part because, for example, Ticketmaster, they make money on the fees when they sell you the tickets, originally. They make a lot of money when you resell those tickets on their website. So their fees are substantially higher for the resale of the tickets. And so, they could say, oh, we're going to try to help, eliminate the secondary market, but they like the secondary market. They make it very easy. I just bought tickets for my wife's birthday. I can't get her into the French Laundry, but we're going to go to the US Open. We're going to sit in the nosebleeds. And I went the day that the tickets were released and I was able to buy 8 of them. And, one of the high rows for us and her friends. But as I'm buying them on the day they're released, tickets are being bought by other people and immediately being sold, on the resale market. And so when I got there, half the tickets I could buy were tickets that, I was buying directly from the venue. And the other half, if I had wanted at substantially higher prices, were tickets that Ticketmaster had sold 10 minutes earlier and were being, made available for resale. So I think there's an issue, which is, you could solve this problem, but you would need to make a bunch of changes, including the incentives for Ticketmaster. There's also rules like, you might want to shut down resale in certain cases. You might want to do what we do with airplane tickets for concert tickets where it has your name on it. And I can buy a ticket, from New York to San Francisco. I cannot resell it to you at a higher price if there's a demand shock. I have to return it to the airline and they can sell it to you. And you could imagine the same thing being true of concert tickets, particularly, now that technology would allow it to, me to validate who I am when I show up the same way I do at an airport. We currently don't have, the rules, legislation kind of allows lobby support from these ticket sellers. You have the right to resell a ticket to other people. That might not be great for the market as a whole.
Okay, good. Yeah, not only could I imagine it, I could easily imagine it. But thank you for explaining why it's not going to come to pass in our lifetime. So let's get out of the rock arena and into work. So there are 2 ways hidden markets work at work. One is that as an employee, you are unbeknownst probably swimming in a bunch of hidden markets, and you also control your own hidden market. So let's start with the first one. Yeah. You're an employee. What are the hidden markets that you encounter every day?
Yeah. So a lot of hidden markets within the firm, are about, how workers are assigned, say, to shifts that they might want to work. Who's going to work on Christmas? Who's going to work, on Thanksgiving? What are the, who's taking what holidays? We have this scarce resource. Everybody can't take off at the same time. You might have preferences for certain schedules where you're happy to work a late shift, but you can't work the following morning, and you don't want to do a double. And so there's a lot of like production side hidden markets where we have to figure out what the rules are going to be for how we dole out these this treatment. It could be based on seniority. That's something that you see a lot in workplace settings where the person who's been around the longest, either because of union rules or because we think that's the fair way to do it, gets first dibs. But of course, that's not really fair, right? If the person who's been there the longest always gets to take off Christmas, and the person who started a year after them, has to work every year, that's also not going to be fair. So one thing that firms can take advantage of that in theater ticket or concert ticket markets you don't really have as much of a chance to use is the fact that you're playing a game repeatedly. So it could be that we start to unlock equity when we look across time. So maybe we take turns with who has priority. Maybe you get Christmas this year, I get it next year, or maybe we're kind of more creative about the ways in which we dole out the scarce resources to kind of a changing but consistent workforce over time. So that's like one bucket is things that employees want that firms can't give to everybody. But you're not gonna have an auction to decide which, like, I'm willing to work 3 extra shifts. And maybe you will actually. I guess you might do an auction without money, right? I might say I want Christmas off, but I'll work these other 3 holidays, and that would work to solve it. But you wouldn't say I'll work Christmas, but you have to pay me 3 times as much, and somebody else says, I'll work Christmas for only 2x. We typically don't have that be the solution in the firm. We have some other set of rules.
Right. And yeah, this seems like kind of standard for most jobs. Would your advice to management leadership be to surface this hidden market, be very explicit about it, and then have a meeting about it? Or because this seems like it's very back channely, very favors.
Yeah. So you definitely, this is a theme in the book as well, is that, if you're going to set up a hidden market, if you give some people the tricks about how to succeed in it and other people don't get them, then you're creating a bunch of inequity in the market, not with the allocation, on its own. The allocation rule could be very fair, but if half the people know the tricks to win in that market and half don't, then you're going to end up with a lot of unhappy employees. So, I think when you have a hidden market that you've established, you want to be transparent about the rules, and kind of everybody is on equal footing in terms of knowing what they have to do, what is going to give them priority for that scarce resource, and give them all the opportunity to kind of play in it. Do you want to have them involved when you are designing the hidden market? I mean, maybe. I think it depends. So I have research on using control in workplaces more broadly than just hidden markets. But when workers have autonomy and you say like, oh no, we're going to kind of impose this rule on you, a lot of times workers will kind of recoil against that, and they'll kind of punish the firm for taking such a heavy hand with them. Okay, I have to show up at 9 o'clock. You're going to make me do that. You're going to make me wear, a certain uniform, but I'm going to, I'll show up at 9, but I'm going to be surly and you can't control my attitude. And I'm going to kind of take it out on the customers because feel like I'm being mistreated. And my research shows, that I think something that's probably intuitive, which is if you give employees a voice in that process that determines the rules, and ideally if you apply them bilaterally, so it's not just the workers who have to show up at 9, but management has to show up at 9 too, then you actually get a lot less of that reactance to those rules. You get a lot more buy-in and comfort from employees who have to abide by the kind of guidance that you've set. And so I think the same thing is true in the hidden markets you establish. Like, people will be happier with the outcome if they feel like the process was fair.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. And I mean, something like Christmas vacation seems like a part of job or maybe peripheral to the job, but a big hidden market I would imagine that everybody faces at work is the promotion. There's one slot, many people want it. So how does that play out?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's, being clear ex ante. I mean, again, I'm now designing what the ideal hidden market might be. Right. In this case, it's not just about, okay, we don't want to dole out promotions equally. We want to find the person who's best equipped to handle it. And so having kind of set of clearly defined ways that we can identify and elevate the person who's going to be best for that role is going to be key to having that hidden market, that process, kind of feel fair and be efficient for the firm. So I've researched on how this is more in the realm of like gender differences on the labor market. But one of the findings I have from that research is that if what you rely on in the promotion decision is self-promotion, people talking about their own ability and performance. So you asked me like, how good were you as a professor, instructor, and researcher last year? I'm going to talk much more favorably about my ability and performance than an equally performing woman would. That's kind of what the data bears out. And so one lesson from that research is that you might not want to rely on just the way people, fill out self-evaluations of their performance, or you might, I should say differently. Of course, you wouldn't only rely on that. You might not want to rely on that at all, because it is going to have, a bias built in. Much better would be, anything that's at all objective, or what others say about a given worker, to identify kind of their ability and performance in the job.
Okay, yeah. So before we flip onto, I guess, a person having control of designing their own market at work, what are the other overlapping hidden markets that are determining people's work at work?
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff related to like budgets and how you, what financial resources you have available. So, I have a research budget that I can use to fund certain activities. Division at a firm might have, a budget that they can use to achieve the kind of the goals of that unit, that organization. And so, there's market rules about, do your budgets roll over to the next year? What can you use them for and what can't you use them for? And kind of being thoughtful about those rules that you impose is super important, because it turns out if you have rules that approximate use it or lose it, where if you don't spend the money within this fiscal year, then it goes away, or even worse, it makes your future budgets lower, then you're going to end up with people spending a ton of money right at the end of the year just to make sure that they've exhausted their budget. And you see that in everything from research budgets for professors, and also for like federal budgets when organizations are have to procure IT contracts. They will buy much worse contracts at the end of the fiscal year and pay a lot more for worse products because they're going to lose the money if they don't spend it.
What's the alternative to that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be thoughtful with some ability to roll over the funds to future years. So like avoiding these situations where you create unintended incentives for people to take actions against the interests of the firm. So you obviously don't want to let subgroups in your firm like roll over funds forever. You don't want to have tens of millions of dollars tied up in some small division that isn't spending their budget each year. But you probably don't want to have them be required to spend everything. So maybe it's a 1 year rollover. Maybe you can hold 50% of the budget that you're allocated in a given year if you think it is useful for your organization or your team to do so. But then, kind of trade off the negative incentives you get when you force people to spend down their budgets with, not letting them hoard cash or other resources at the firm.
Right. Sometimes awards bodies who give out annual prizes, some years they'll say, we're just not going to give one out because nothing meets the. And I always have so much respect for that.
When we give out grants, I'm on some bodies that give out grants for research, and sometimes the projects are all great and we want to borrow from future years, and sometimes we don't spend the full set of resources because we're not as impressed with the projects. And so we have the flexibility to do that. You can imagine a firm saying, no, we have to give out this award every year. We have to, we can't, even if there's a bunch of great projects, we can't borrow from next year. that might not be optimal either.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that comes to mind as we're talking about is how arbitrary things are to a specific time frame. As a very kind of banal example, like they announced the Emmys for like Best Actor yesterday. I was like, holy crap, this is a banger year. Like any of these people could win. But then some years it's like, who are these people?
Yeah, you wanna build into your hidden markets the opportunity to kind of be thoughtful across time. And I mentioned that earlier when thinking about if I lost the lottery this year, maybe you want to reward me next year. But similarly, like you want to have rules for guidance, but you don't want to have them be so strict in the firm that you can't take advantage of a stellar year and kind of make more investments and take more swings in a really good year than in a bad year.
So we've been just talking about like people stepping into the hidden markets. Let's talk about how a person at work can create a hidden market of their own. So how do we engineer a hidden market to be advantageous for us at work?
Yeah. So we are market designers. We design the hidden markets for the scarce resources that we control. So we talked about how firms do it. So maybe the management is designing those markets, but anyone in a firm is the designer of the market for their own time and attention. And so what you want to do in those situations is be thoughtful about whether you are achieving your hidden markets you're creating are achieving the goals that you want, including kind of elevating yourself as the market designer, giving you the best possible experience. So one example that I like is how we structure our calendars. It's like the most important thing for me. I'm going to go wherever the calendar says I should. And a lot of us use what you might call a first in time, first in right policy, which is how we allocated historically water from the Colorado River in the Southwest. Basically, whoever was the first to tap the river got priority rights forever for the next 100 years. So California farmers who were the first to tap the Colorado River got access to water to grow alfalfa before the residents of Las Vegas and Phoenix got access to water, for drinking. And that's not necessarily the most efficient way to allocate water in years where there isn't, the Colorado River isn't as full as we might like. That's basically what we do when we set recurring meetings on our calendar. We set recurring meetings every week. We're going to show up at 11 a.m. on Tuesday and have a meeting with this team. And that's going to be true whether or not the team, has a lot of productive stuff to do or, is just checking in to kind of see if everybody did what they were supposed to do the last week. And that is not necessarily the most efficient way to organize things. Giving priority to some decision we made maybe 2 years ago to have this team meet Tuesdays at 11 when there are maybe more pressing things that we want to do. Same thing, when we're thinking about email maintenance or kind of what tasks we're completing on a regular basis, right? We might want to think about what I call the 3 E's: equity, efficiency, and ease for market participants. Do the people who are trying to get our attention, are we allocating our kind of email responses in an efficient, equitable, and way that's easy for market participants trying to get our attention to kind of get responses? And so we might decide, okay, we're going to let everybody know that we're not going to check email until 4 p.m. today. And so, everybody knows that our protocol is we check email at 10, we check email at 4. And, if you're not expecting a response in the middle, then, they can optimize against our market rules that we created. And then we have to decide, all right, are we going to, in what order are we going to triage these emails? Which ones are we going to respond to today? Which ones are going to be kicked to tomorrow? But just kind of being thoughtful about the rules that we establish so other people, are getting access to our time and attention, and we are having a good experience, in our work life, and balancing their needs against ours.
And is some of the stuff that would be particular to an employee analogous to what we're talking about in terms of a company? Like, is it advantageous to present scarcity, to say there's not a lot of this, or you need it and you need to think about it?
Yeah, I mean, So certainly the achieving the 3 E's of, having a system that's equitable, efficient, and easy for market participants, that's definitely something the firm wants to do, whether the market participants are customers trying to buy goods from them, or their employees, trying to allocate scarce resources in the firm. I think the telling people that there is scarcity kind of cuts both ways, right? In one sense, it could be I'm letting you know that we are not going to be able to meet everybody's needs. And so that, if we're going to we decide we're going to run a first come, first serve race that I would not advise doing for who gets, additional resources for their team, or who gets to be off on Christmas. Like, you would not want to run a first come, first serve race. But if you were going to, you'd want to tell everybody there's going to be a race and you should show up at 9 a.m. to kind of make your preferences known, because it would be, unfair otherwise. But of course, with certain products like the, Labubus or the other, trendy Supreme drops, where we're going to kind of only offer a certain number of hats available at a particular time, you might strategically want to tell people about the scarcity, emphasize the scarcity, because maybe that does generate additional demand. And that's not something you'd want to do in the workplace if you have employees, you don't want to artificially create demand for being off on Christmas, but you might want to artificially, generate extra demand for your consumer product by making it seem, scarce and desirable. So that's like a tool you can use. You just have to be thoughtful about when you let people know how hard it is to get access to a resource, because the psychology will drive people to want the thing that they can't get.
What's the strangest hidden market you've come across?
Oh, God. So for, I mentioned, I think earlier, hunting tags. So this is one that, this is new to me. I'm not somebody who would do that recreationally, but there are lottery-based systems where folks who want to hunt a particular animal, say a male mule deer, there's not that many that can be killed in any given year. You have to kind of balance the ecological considerations against, you don't have too many mule deers to upset the ecology, but you don't overhunt them because that'll decimate a herd. So there's only a few, say, in a given state that can be killed. And there are many, many recreational hunters who want access to them. So they have lotteries. So you apply to hunt the mule deer, and they have winners of the lotteries. And they realized it was not fair over time, that there were people who would apply every year and want to get a tag and would lose every year. And so the state started to innovate, and they started giving rewards. I mentioned this earlier, for folks who had lost more years. So it could be that if you had lost 5 years in a row, you'd get 6 entries this time, the five for the times that you lost, and a 6th one for this time. And so if you had lost 10 times in a row, you'd get, it was going to be your 10th year, you'd get 10 entries. Some states said this is not going far enough. There are people who apply every year, and they lose to people who are applying for the first time. So they switched it to a cube system. This was South Dakota. They went from, if you enter 10 times and lost, you got 10 entries. Now, if you enter 10 times and lost, you got 10 cubed, or 1,000 entries in the lottery. And so the chance that you won rather than a newbie went from 10 to 1 to 1,000 to 1. And so there's these markets that pop up, and then regular people who are just like trying to make things fair kind of innovate over time. And you end up with these kind of strange market rules that by historical accident are allocating these things that tens of thousands of people in a given state want in a year.
That's great. It's nice to know innovation is coming from the live game hunting industry. It's a hotbed.
It can come from anywhere.
Yes. Just as a last thing, Judd, to just zoom out for a second, there is, to me, a lot of hidden markets in the world at large, a lot of inequity, as it were. I ride my bike to work. I ride by a food bank. I ride by an encampment of homeless people who are unhoused, who don't have apartments or houses. Have you thought about how this applies to inequities in the world at large with societal issues?
Yeah. So a lot of those, I mean, we talked about a lot of everyday kind of markets that folks play in. A lot of the most important hidden markets are ones where the resources are super valuable, and again, there are not enough to go around. So public housing is a very classic kind of hidden market example where there are lots of people who would benefit greatly from having access to an affordable apartment in the city that they live in. Maybe they're currently unhoused, maybe they're housed but kind of in a less desirable situation, staying with friends or in a shelter. And that hidden market, right, is trying to figure out how to as fairly as possible allocate those scarce resources, apartments that become available when people move out or pass away, to the many people who want them. And those markets end up taking there are different rules. Sometimes they are based on lottery. Sometimes it's a first come first serve system where people who've been waiting the longest get access to it. And sometimes there's priority built in. If you're already in public housing, you might have preferential treatment if you want to switch to a more desirable unit. Maybe your family grew, you have a new kid, and you want a bigger place. You might have special access to those. It depends on the city and the specific rules. But governments have to kind of constantly think about how to take the scarce resources that they have available and dole them out. I have lots of research on organ donation, an example I mentioned earlier, where we have a very long waiting list for people who need a life-saving kidney or a life-saving liver transplant. And we need a way of deciding when one becomes available because somebody passed away, but in a way that allows their organs to be available for transplant. We need a way to decide who gets offered that kidney, who gets offered that liver. And the rules of that hidden market determine who's going to get first dibs at the kind of life-saving treatment. There are also strategies to play in those markets. So we might like them or not like them from an equity sense, but people do things called multi-list for organs where they're listed on the waiting list for a kidney in 2 different states, so that depending on where a kidney becomes available, they might get their kidney in New York, they might get their kidney in Tennessee, and they have set themselves up so that they can receive a kidney in either place. We might not love that, but we don't begrudge somebody whose life is on the line from trying to take every opportunity that they can.
Well, you've done it. You've made me see hidden markets everywhere. So this is great. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks so much.
This is a fascinating topic. Thanks for sharing this hour with us, man.
I had fun also.
We do these conversations with Lavin speakers every week. If you like what you heard, please subscribe at YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Judd or any of the Lavin speakers, visit thelavinagency.com. Thanks for listening.